We're going to have a sermon from Sister Nell, so if she would come and do that, that would be great.
I really don't like to be here. I really don't like to speak in public. And things get worse because now it has to be in English. So if I could speak in Spanish, that would be a little bit easier. But I'm always concerned about my grammar mistakes. And there's a couple of them, but there's one that I've been struggling a lot lately. It's the in and on. In Spanish, we have one word for both. So Ryan had told me this rule and that rule, and you think about this and you think about that. But the truth is that I'm still having trouble. So, for example, if I want to say I was in the parking lot, and I'm not sure if it's I'm in the parking lot or on top of the parking lot. So what I try to do is say I'm in the parking lot. So I pronounce the N, leave out the I, leave out the S, U, whatever has to be there. So you may gonna have to remove letters, add letters, or so sorry about that. I've been reading about, I read a book about the life of a missionary, and I didn't know anything about this missionary. I didn't know anything about his life. So when I was reading this book, the Lord spoke several things to my life. And the name of this man is Jacob Des Hasser. I don't know if anybody has heard about him, but I'm going to try to give, it's a very short summary about his life and just tell you very briefly what the Lord spoke to my life through the life of this man. He was born in Oregon, and his mom and his stepfather were Christian, but he was not. And in 1940, he decided to sign up for the army. And 2 years later, whenever Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese, he was told that he was in a mission, and it was a very dangerous mission, and they needed volunteers. So he said that the only reason why he raised his hand was because he was ashamed of being the only person to stand out. So he didn't want to go there, but he decided to go, and they were sent in the mission, and while they were on the mission, they realized that their mission was to bombard several cities of Japan, fly back, go to China, refuel their plane, and come back. So when they were leaving, they said that there was a problem with his plane, and there was a hole, so they knew that they were going to be losing gas mileage, or they had less gas mileage. So what their concern was that they had to fly to China, but they were needing to try to land in a China that was free, and it was not occupied by Japanese. So they went, they hit the targets, they came back, and when they were landing, they realized that they most likely were landing on a China that was controlled by the Japanese. So when he landed, him and the man that landed there, they were taken captive by the Japanese, and they were prisoner of war for more than 2 years. So they were taken from one jail to another jail. They were tortured, beaten, and they were also, they faced starvation. They said that the first time that they allowed them to take a bath, to brush their teeth, was after 4 months of being there. So every time they got near somebody else, they said that they smelled so bad because everybody was going through that. While they were there, at some point they allowed them to have some books. So among those books was the Bible. And they were allowed to have 3 weeks the book that they had. So at that point, he said that he spent time reading and rereading the Bible. And he became aware that there was a presence with him on the jail. And he concluded that that presence was God. So at that point, he said he knelt and he bowed his head and he accepted Christ. And he said that he had a very strange sensation. He said that his heart was filled with joy, even though he was in the midst of a prison. And during the remainder of the time, he spent reading and memorizing passages. So whenever he didn't have the Bible, he could go through those passages while he was still there. He went through different things. They allowed him to do something and they don't. So at some point, what they were having to do is sit still for 16 hours, staring just at the wall. They couldn't move, they couldn't do anything. So one day he said he was going through the passages of Daniel, how he knelt when he was not supposed to do it, and how God had shut him out of the lions. So he said that he just felt that so he knelt down and he folded his hands in prayer, and he said that the guards came, and a guard came and he started hitting the cell of the cell. So he started hitting, and he started telling him he needed to stand up. But he didn't do that, so he went back, brought more guards, and came back. And he was sure that he was going to be bitten. But they didn't do that, and they were amazed, and they were confused what was going on. I mean, he knew that they were there, that they could torture him, and he decided to stay there. So they decided that something was going on in his life, something wrong. And so they left the cell and got a doctor. He gave him the medication that he needed and gave him more food. And he said that with this, his faith was strengthened because he knew that God was with him even though he was in prison. Several weeks later, something else happened to him. He woke up with the impression that he needed to pray for peace, not for the future, but for that moment, so that the Japanese want to end the war. So he prayed during lunch, in the morning, and lunchtime, and at 2 o'clock he said that he heard or felt that God spoke to him and said, "You don't have to pray anymore, the victory is won." He was so happy, and he was telling everybody that the victory was won, but how could he know if he was inside of the cell? So later on he discovered that it was that day when the Japanese surrendered and when the victory was won. But he still remained in that prison for like 5 more days. And at that time, he said that he thought he was going to die because he was very weak. But he said that he saw himself raising his arms, but when he saw his hands, he saw that his hands were empty. And he prayed and asked the Lord, he said, "I don't want to go with you with empty hands, but I want to do something for Jesus." And he heard a voice that spoke to him and said, "You're called to go and teach the Japanese people." So he was liberated, he went to school, and he got married. And a couple of years later, he went back to Japan, and he stayed as a missionary for 29 years. And he preached to multitudes, and many, many came to Christ. And in one occasion, one woman came and said, "Every time that I had read from you or heard from you, I've been wanting to kill you as a revenge because my brothers were killed during the war." She said, "But now that I hear your message, I feel compelled to ask you more about the God you talk of." So, like this woman, many came to Christ because of the testimony of his testimony, how he chose to love instead of hate. And while I was reading this, I was thinking how important it is to hear the voice of God and to have a heart that will obey. Deuteronomy 26:14 says, "I have hearkened to the voice of the Lord my God, and have done according to all that thou hast commanded me." What would have happened if this man, instead of hearing the voice of God, he would have chosen the path of hate and of bitterness? For sure, many would not have come to Christ. And I think this is something common. Maybe it's just me, the one that goes through that, but sometimes we're offended because somebody said something or did something or didn't do something that I think that they should have done. And what would happen if because of these little offenses we decide to give up? If we have been offended, let's ask God that He will give us the grace to forgive, to forget, and to keep up going. And let's ask God that He will give us an ear to hear His voice and a heart that is willing to do what He's wanting each one of us to do. We don't know, maybe the Lord is calling us to minister people that we don't like or we're not interested. But what would have happened if, let's like Jacob ministered to, he went back and ministered those who tortured him, and he was, because of that love, of that testimony, many lives were touched. So let's not limit what God can do through us, and let's ask Him to help us and to give us the grace.
So he just going to give his sermon. Thank you.
Well, I don't think this is going to make 5 minutes, and I just finished today, so it might not be that good, but we'll see. As most of you know, I love studying war. Today I'd like to present a comparison between a soldier's communication with his commander and our communication with the Lord. In war, communication is vital. By using radio or some other form of communication device, soldiers can call in airstrikes, ask for reinforcements, direct artillery fire, etc., etc. Likewise, in our lives, by communicating with God, we gain power, find deliverance, and cause Him to draw near to us. I have found that the majority of military operations that go askew are messed up by a failure to communicate or a lack of working communication devices. This often leads to soldiers being overwhelmed and usually defeated. This is also true in our daily lives. Without communicating with the Lord, we are left to fight alone, and nobody can fight alone. The enemy is just too strong. Before a conflict, a soldier receives an intelligence briefing. He is told what his objective is, he is given an idea of what the level of enemy resistance will be, and he is equipped with the tools and information to accomplish his mission. This correlates to our morning time of prayer and reading of our Bibles. I have found in my own life that asking the Lord for His power, wisdom, and strength, etc., before the fight is often more effective than asking when you are already overwhelmed. When this step is missed or done half-heartedly, we start our daily battles unequipped and unready. Soldiers also communicate with their commanders when they are in the combat zone. Soldiers tell their leader how strong the enemy is, where the enemy is, and what they need to defeat the enemy. The commander then gives orders and/or sends help. During our daily struggles, we also can stay in communication with the Lord. For me, the most effective ways of finding help in my battles are singing church songs, singing the song of the Lord, or telling the Lord how good He is, how He'll never fail us, how He loves us. Yeah, He knows how great He is, but sometimes it gives me strength just to hear. The Lord can show us what to do. He can speak audibly if He wants to. But one of the most powerful things that He does for us is coming with His presence. He shows up to fight our battle, and who can stand before Him? When the battle is ended, soldiers have a debriefing. They tell the commander how the battle went, what went wrong and what went right. They go over every detail. The commander now has responsibility for what happened, and the soldiers can rest. We can debrief as well. Telling the Lord how things went, we can tell Him about the fights we won, ask for forgiveness and/or cleansing for the fights that we lost, and we can give Him the fights that we are still in. Then we can rest knowing that everything will be all right and that He will prepare us for the battle tomorrow. The soldier on the battlefield knows that if he asks for help, help will come. Our God can do anything. If we are seeking His aid with all of our whole hearts throughout the day, He will help us. Thank you.